Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for being here. So this is going to be a multi-episode series of hopefully short episodes looking at the spooky side of science and technology and quietly pointing out the hypocrisy that hardcore science shuns magic and what they refer to as the woo, whereas most of our scientific and technological institutions and progression stand on a firm foundation of really spooky stuff. So, Carl Jung said, for example, that symbols were a direct key to the man's subconscious. And what he means by that is that to the initiated, then a symbol can convey a hell of a lot more information, either through connotation or prior learning, than just is conveyed in the image itself. So in this episode, we're going to look at a very modern use of esoteric symbology, which is mission patches. Now, I first became aware of this through John Ramirez on an interview he did on Project Unity, I think it was, where he showed some of NASA and the intelligence community's service patches, which is something which for each mission, or if you're in a particular squadron, you have a patch. And some of them are really, really weird. So we're going to go through a bunch of them now, interpret what we can, and see what we can learn along the way. Let's get into it. Okay, so these patches that we're about to get into are mainly from three different agencies. There's the NRO, the US Air Force, and also NASA. So you're also going to notice some trends in the imagery that they use. So for example, NASA tend to lean into a bit more of the Masonic imagery or Egyptian looking stuff. The US Air Force tends to use more mythological, and the NRO goes for a lot of Greek imagery and some downright creepy looking stuff. So this is no exception. You're also going to notice that a lot of these launches are from Vandenberg Air Force Base, which was the site of not only the Atlas missile being shot down, witnessed by Bob Jacobs, but also the Red Square UAP event, which Jeff Nusatelli was there for. So a lot of spooky things going on around Vandenberg. So in this patch, this is from NRO Launch 35 from Vandenberg in an Atlas V missile. But let's get into the imagery. So this shows a sorceress or goddess, which is probably Hecate, which was the Greek goddess of magic and sorcery, hidden knowledge. A very dark figure, I mean, often used in pop culture for witches and black magic and stuff like that. The trident is another very potent symbol of Greek mythology, which was used by Poseidon or Neptune to control the seas. The flame could well be a Promethean reference and represents knowledge or power. So the overall thing with the flame being in her hand and wrapped around the trident implies control over a lot of power. So when you consider that to be from the NRO and to do with magic, the whole picture tells more than sort of the sum of its parts. Okay, here's another creepy one from the NRO, again launched from Vandenberg Air Force Base, this time on a Delta IV Heavy rocket. And this translates directly to better the devil you know. So let's get into the image. There's three core components. First of all, we've got the stars and stripes, obviously representing America and democracy and all of the things that they value. And this is being protected from fire and chaos and destruction by a dark phoenix central to the image. The color choice is important here. This is a black phoenix with red eyes. And the implication is that they are ready to fight fire with fire, and that they will equally counter dark deeds with dark deeds done to protect the innocent. So a lot of symbology in a relatively simple image. Hold on a minute. Hello, Bob. Read mate, it's me, Geordie Bob. I just wanted to pop in and say that shirt looks wicked. Where can I get one? Oh, cheers, man. You mean this old thing? Well, yeah, it and many other cool things like it are available in my store, which will be in the description underneath. So whether you just want to buy me a coffee if you think it's worth it, or get yourself a cool shirt, it's all down there. But thanks for popping in, man. You better get a move on. The whole internet's looking for you at the moment. Catch you later.
Wicked, catch you later, man.
Anyway, moving on. So this one's a bit of a classic and very well known, given that it is extremely creepy. So again, this is the NRO, launch number 39, and the slogan this time in English reading, "Nothing is beyond our reach," as much of a warning for their English speakers as the usual hidden codes. So, what's in the image? Well, this shows the globe being ensnared by a kraken or an octopus, but probably a kraken from Greek mythology, given that it was something that could be summoned and cause immense destruction. Now, the tentacles themselves, if you think about what a tentacle is, it's both a means of moving and manipulating things just like our hand, but it's also a sensor. And it shows its sensors reaching all around the world, particularly reaching for China and Russia. And the Kraken octopus symbolizing both knowledge, as they're incredibly intelligent, but also incredible destructive power. So literally showing that they have control over the entire planet, which is a bit creepy. Okay, this one is a US Air Force service patch and translates to "keep away you who are uninitiated." So there is a lot of dense symbology here. So first of all, this is for special projects, special access projects, which is, as we all know, they're sort of black work and secret developmental things, and arguably back-engineered things too, not just from things like flying saucers, but also, captured Russian planes, captured Chinese sensors, things like that. So the dragon itself in classic mythology shows power, transformation, and they're also known for guarding treasures, but it's also a great agent of change. The clouds form a literal smoke screen protected by this dragon, which is raining thunderbolts associated with Zeus, but also to do with knowledge again and control over immense power and destruction, directed down below from those above in the clouds. So a very dense, at first glance quite simple image that gives away a lot of information. Okay, now here's another Air Force patch, this time for the U-2 spy plane. Now, the name of the U-2 is the Dragon Lady, which shows the power of this symbology and imagery stretches beyond their service patches and often onto the technology and vehicles themselves. And when you look at the history of things like the B-2 Spirit or the F-4 Phantom, there's a lot of spooky names, even the SR-71 Blackbird referring that dark phoenix from the image before. So what can we see from this one? Well, the map shows, first of all, the test area itself, which would have been Nevada or Area 51 and its other related sites. But then we also see the wings of the plane spanning the globe. Now, the U-2 is an exceptional plane in that it can fly at 70,000 feet, which is literally the edge of space, and access more or less anywhere it wants to on the planet. When they were used in the UK, they were smuggled in banana crates because they didn't want, it was so secret they didn't even want the UK radar picking them up. And then it was assembled in this country and flown out over the Middle East. So the slogan for this one, "In God we trust, in all others we monitor," shows that even its closest allies are under the watchful eye of the US. Kind of as much as a threat and a show of strength as it is capability. So the dragon again shows power and control. The image here, it's slightly concealing the silhouette of the plane itself. Now you will notice, particularly in Air Force patches, that often the silhouette of the vehicle is hidden in the image somewhere. This is going to become a bit more of a talking point later in the conversation. But for now, yeah, it shows the monitoring and slight distrust over the rest of the world, even their closest allies. Okay, so this next one is loaded. This is the patch of the Flight Test Squadron for the US Air Force, Special Access Projects Testing. So when all of these fantastic new planes are developed, it's usually a handful of elite pilots that would be used in their testing. And that is a life of total secrecy. So what can we see from this patch? Well, it's from Edwards Air Force Base, which has a long and rich history with both space and the Air Force, and also UAPs. The staff or missile shows magic and technology being wielded by the wizards themselves being the test squad. An orbital craft there putting power into the wizard's hand. The constellation is very similar to the Pleiades. The rocket also looks like a sword, showing obviously its capabilities in space, but also its capabilities as a weapon. And the red triangular outline behind the wizard is not to be discounted. There's a symmetry to it, and it may well be the silhouette of a particular test craft that they were using at the time. When you consider all of these black triangles and things like the B-2 that came out of development, plus the hypersonic plane that I am absolutely positive replaced the Blackbird, it would have been this group that was doing the flight test. So a lot to unpack from quite a busy image, and I'm sure that there's a few aspects to it that I've missed myself. But if you do spot anything, please weigh in the comments, because I mean, we're all in this together and I'm no expert. Okay, back to the super creepy NRO. So this is from NRO launch number 39, which you'll recognize from the Kraken imagery. Never before, never again, implying that this was either a complete game changer of a launch, it was a classified payload, or a one-time act, you know, like we considered dropping the atomic bomb, something like that. Now, the imagery is a hydra, or a series of serpents, but most likely a hydra, given their penchant for using Greek imagery, encircling the whole world, implying a multi-pronged threat. The hydra has multiple heads. When you cut one off, two grow in its place, and it relentlessly attacks, showing resilience, adaptability, and control. The snake's heads themselves are taking a very aggressive posture, coming from North America itself. The 11 stars around the outside is also a biblical reference mentioned in Genesis about Joseph's dominance, where everything and everyone, including the stars, bowed down to him. So it's really highlighting American primacy and dominance over the world.
That's okay. Trust me. Hail Hydra.
Okay, it's time to get right into the deep end. So this is another NRO patch from NRO Launch 32, another classified payload. But what it was a SIGINT, or a high orbit signal intelligence satellite. Possibly from the Orion program, which was a special access program used to monitor global digital communications, which is extremely unethical. I mean, this is literally the plot of The Dark Knight. So the Latin at the top translates to "He, God, has favoured our undertakings." There is a long history of authoritarian and very, very strict technocracies using God or religion or faith or even cults to justify extremely debatably moral behaviors, like, for example, monitoring global communications. So symbology here, the most prominent thing is the Eye of Providence, which shows omnipotence and the ability to see all. It's also a very key and strong Masonic reference. The pyramid is another Masonic reference, obviously with Egyptian connotations too, shows strength, stability, and esoteric geometry. Very important. Also below this you have another triangle, which, as we know from lots of UAP and esoteric and magical symbolism, is a very, very important symbol. What better symbology to show the all-seeing eye as a modern-day spy satellite surveying the world and seeing everything below it, a means of perfect control using technology. Okay, this is a really fun one. Again, US Air Force. This was a classified flight test for the development of the B-2 bomber. And the translation there, gustatus similis pullus, tastes like chicken, refers to an episode from the Twilight Zone where an alien book is discovered, and when they eventually decrypt it and decipher it, it turns out to be a cookbook. So it's a kind of tongue-in-cheek reference to that. Now, interesting, why has the knife got a cross on it? Why is there a circle with a mark on pointing towards the knife on the B2? I don't know. Maybe you can point that out. But very, very prominent is an alien's head. And this is actually a tongue-in-cheek reference to the Roswell incident, as it was the 509th Bomber Group, which has had its name changed one or two times, who were originally the B-52s that dropped the atomic bomb on Japan. Also, they were the B-2s, or B-21s maybe they were, which bombed Iran a couple of weeks ago, and were stationed at Roswell, New Mexico during the now infamous historical UAP incident. And so they carry that symbology to this day. However, and this is very speculatory, I personally believe that amongst other planes, the B-2 in particular was developed using back-engineered technology. Very, very certainly from a crash retrieval, as it has a lot of technology which has not been admitted to this day. I covered this in my Black Triangles video, but amongst other things, it has an ionic drive where it can have a separate charge on the top of the wing to the bottom, which propels it forward silently. So once it gets up using its normal engines, it can then essentially, a bit like the Hunt for Red October, it can convert to silent running. And the phrase that if you hear it coming, it's not for you, is now synonymous with the bomber. Maybe that is a direct reference to its exotic heritage hidden in plain sight. Okay, so this one is super deep, but also super simple, and really highlights what we've been talking about all episode. This is a US Air Force Special Access Program. And this deals with a certain program called TENCAP, which dealt with the militarization of existing or discovered tech, literal back engineering of existing technology. An example of this is when they used AI to look at people's routers in their house, and by looking at the fields of Wi-Fi, they could then be back engineered as a form of reconnaissance to tell how many humans are in that building and what rooms they're in and what positions that they're in, to give a strategic advantage to the military should they need. TENCAP is also used for, looking at radio signals, potentially used for energy weapons and all sorts of exotic and weird stuff. The weirdness doesn't end there. So the slogan at the bottom, let them hate so long as they fear, which is a quote from Caligula, who was a infamous Roman emperor towards the end of Rome, that dealt with, is very well known for kind of orgies and extreme behavior. And the idea being that it doesn't matter if people don't respect you as long as they fear what they're making. Now, what I find the most interesting part of this is that the Air Force logo, which is underneath the alien head, obviously the black background showing the black project, the Air Force logo is very subtly different to a normal Air Force logo. Normally, on the Air Force logo, as you'll see here, it shows the wings and then a star. And in this one, you have a delta-shaped craft in place of, in fact, as a component of what the original star would be. But when you consider the shape of these, the things like the F-117 and these, again, the proposed hypersonic craft and the black triangles that people keep seeing everywhere, I think this follows the trend of it being hidden in plain sight. What do you think, though? And if you spot anything that I haven't, please let me know in the comments. So what have we learned so far? Well, we've seen Masonic imagery, we've seen Egyptian imagery, we've seen a lot of Greek mythology referred to, and a lot of just fantasy and mythological references, with the use of things like Latin, which is a dead language, so it doesn't seem like an obvious or effective means of communication for other people. But the question is why? Why in particular are they using that? Well, for the answer to that, you're going to have to wait for episode 2, because we're going to do a deep dive into the history of NASA and a lot of its background and its forefathers and their relationship with esoteric practices. So I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you for the next one. Take care.